Greetings again, David J Coon with Qigong Awareness. Welcome. We're discussing some highlights from my book, Qigong for Beginners, Your Path to Greater Health and Vitality, going over some things that might be important to you. And I hope that they are because I think the planet needs a lot of these types of practices. So I'm pretty excited here. I've been rattling off all of these different chapters. I'm on to chapter 10 right now, and I'm planning on finishing up the book. It's the day after Christmas. I'm getting all pumped up for the new year. I got a few days off here, and I'm using them wisely and constructively. And chapter 10 is an exciting chapter for me. There's a bunch of exciting chapters in here for me. It's all kind of exciting. But chapter 10 is also very exciting for me. So hopefully it is to you as well. And remember, you don't have to buy the hard copy of this book. It's only like $8 on Amazon, I believe, is the going rate for it to get it via ebook. So if you'd rather just spend the $8 and get it via ebook, please do. And I don't make very much money off of the book, by the way. I may make a couple of dollars off of it. Amazon makes the majority of the money there, but it's more important to me that you have some of these practices, and then maybe you'll come back and buy a video or something from us, and maybe start training with us, and then yes, hopefully I can make some money on that so I can keep teaching people like you how to do the practice. Anyway, I've said for many years that I have salt and pepper in my kitchen and I have millions of people to feed. And I've been showing up to that for the last 30 plus years of my life doing that exact thing. So here we are. Let's get on to chapter 10. Cleansing the emotional pain body. All right. Now, I mentioned earlier in one of the previous chapters that in 2007 I was invited to the Oprah Winfrey Show. It was right around the time that The Secret came out. And then shortly thereafter, Eckart Tolle was invited to the show as well. And I know people who know like Eckhart, and I know people who know Oprah, and I know people who know Reverend Beckwith. I haven't met the three of them yet. Maybe I will one day. We'll see. But I'm running very close proximity to those folks. But I mentioned earlier that I was invited to the Oprah show. I declined it at the time. I don't regret it. I wasn't really ready at that time in my life to go on to the show for various reasons. So I withdrew. Was very pleased to see Eckhart Tolle come on to the show, and as I said earlier, I um, been psychic since I was a kid. I see energy in different ways, shapes, and forms. And it's always interesting for me to see different people. And I described Reverend Beckwith earlier in one of my previous videos. And now I will describe Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle, I believe is how his name is technically referred to. And very interesting energy, and he reminds me, and I say this in a very positive way, he reminds me of an elf, and not because of how he looks, because of his energy, and a very powerful energy. If you ever look at some of the photographs of his eyes, a very, very powerful spirit behind those eyes, and has had a very profound awakening. We'll get more into that perhaps another time. I'll leave it at that for now. So chapter 10 again is entitled "Cleansing the Emotional Pain Body." This is a very close subject for me to my teaching, to my practices, and to what I hope to share with the world and convey to the world, those of you who are interested in practicing these kinds of things. Eckhart Tolle says, rather than being your thoughts and emotions, be the awareness behind them. Eckhart Tolle. So I spoke to you earlier about this idea in one of the previous chapters that there's different ways to work with our thoughts. There's ways that might be helpful when you're in the car. There may be ways that are helpful on your way to a business meeting. And then there are ways to work with the mind when you're in your quiet time and you have time to practice a deeper level of meditation. And Eckhart Tolle is all about that deeper level of meditation and stillness. And this is a particular path. So if we look at a little bit of history here for just a brief moment, related to Qigong and related to the Shaolin Temple and related to meditation and martial art and Qigong practices, there's a little bit of a history there. And traditionally speaking, the Buddhists were practitioners that focused very little on the body. They referred to the body as a big skin bag. Um, they actually didn't see much purpose in training the physical body. Whereas the Taoists, for example, and the Zen Buddhists were all about training the body, and the body being the temple, and it being the essentially, like, they wouldn't necessarily use these words, but like the house for God or the house for the spirit, this kind of idea. And that it was the holy temple and it was very, very important, okay, as opposed to the Buddhists who have this idea that because the Buddha enlightened sitting by the Bodhi tree, sitting and doing nothing, the traditional Buddhists would follow a path of sitting. And when you're sitting, you're literally either asleep or you're practicing some degree of awareness of your thoughts, of your breath, of your energy system. And I'm a big fan of that type of practice. Simultaneously, if I were to classify myself, not that I'm any of these things, but as far as philosophically and practically, I'm more of like a Zen Buddhist or a Taoist because I very much practice with the physical body. The Zen Buddhists took practices of meditation and moving meditation where they started moving the body and training the body. There was an entity known as Bodhidharma who supposedly, reportedly, there's different stories on this. It's hard to say. It was a long time ago, but supposedly, um, and reportedly from certain avenues. Some people contradict the story. Anyway, I'll just say it like that. But Bodhidharma was reportedly coming from India, came to China, brought the teachings of Buddhism to the Chinese leaders. They didn't like his form of Buddhism. He reportedly retreated to the Shaolin Temple. When he showed up to the Shaolin Temple, the monks there were practicing this practice of the body being a big skin bag. They didn't train their body. They didn't do anything with their body. They didn't pay attention to how they ate. And this particular entity was like, hey, you're never going to figure out the secret to enlightenment. Your body's never going to live long enough for you to do the practices of enlightenment that are necessary because in a lot of these traditions, and I'm a firm believer in this and practitioner of this, in order for me to do a longer seated meditation, be that 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is, or a longer standing meditation, like a standing tree meditation, which is like a Taoist practice, for like 4 hours. I've done 5 hours of standing meditation. Good luck trying to do that if you don't have some physical strength in your body. It's not going to happen. And so, anyway, I digress. But so in the Qigong practices that were done at the Shaolin Temple, some of those practices eventually became even harder and more extreme. And we see that in the extreme practices of physical Kung Fu, where people are breaking bricks with their hands and their heads and having bricks broken on their body. And my thought process behind that is because I've done some of that myself physically, and you can sometimes break your hand if you do it wrong. That's my story from the earlier video. Luckily, I use some of the same practices to heal my hand and bring it back to a more normal state, and not just a normal state. In fact, the bone that I broke, especially the biggest bone that I broke, is significantly stronger than when I broke it initially. But having said that, anyway, these are particular practices. We don't have to go that extreme. That's more like martial art. Qigong is less than that. But anyway, Eckhart Tolle's emphasis, especially since his awakening, which you can read more about that in terms of his story and so on, highly recommend it. Power of Now is a good book. I personally think that New Earth is even better because it brings us into a deeper understanding of what is called the emotional body. So in chapter 10, I refer to this cleansing of the emotional pain body. And Eckhart Tolle coined this new term, whether he did or some of his teachers did, or his the people who were helping him edit his book and so on. I don't know the details, but he talks about this pain body. And for many centuries, this pain body has been referred to in a larger context as the emotional body. So in the book, I refer to it as the emotional pain body so that it's really the same thing, but just so we have an understanding of what it is, because wow, this is where we as human beings are really stuck and we really need to focus. And Eckhart Tolle has a particular path that he's sharing with the world. And even though we share some parallels, we also have some differences. As far as I know, he's not anything. He's not Buddhist. He's not Zen Buddhist. He's whatever. But in terms of his practices, where you sit and you're aware and you're just watching, that's very Buddhist. Zen Buddhist is you're moving your hand. Zen Buddhist is you're breathing. You're Taoist. You're using your body. We're training the bones, we're training the musculature, we're moving the breath. But in order to do that, in the process of doing that, we're also going to be working through the emotional body. We can also do that by being very still, which takes discipline, and being aware. And some will do that. Eckhart Tolle does it every time he gets on stage. He's just sitting there practicing awareness the whole time, being quiet and purposeful with his words, and meanwhile just watching the stillness. It's a lot for people to grasp. It's a bigger subject. I could go on and on about it all day into greater detail, but for now, we'll just say in this chapter 10, I'm getting into some of the details about the emotional body and how it is that awareness, stillness, sitting there in still meditation begins to burn up the emotional body, the past, the pain body. Those are all the same thing. Ego, it's all the same thing, if you've heard that reference. And how we can begin to start burning away that information, which I did in my 20s. And I had my awakening experience there at 25 when this chakra here opened up and my third eye was filled with emerald greens and very bright luminescent yellows from the solar plexus here. And then I started getting some violets from the crown chakra opening up and so on. Um, my life changed. I mean, I was a very angry adolescent. I was internally violent. Wasn't Luckily, I found martial art and full contact karate and things to channel that anger and that rage and so on. But when I had the healing of my spine, everything changed for me. So it's kind of interesting because you have some energy healers and energy people and so on that whatever it is, talking about crystals and talking about light energy and talking about different frequencies of energy and stuff. Back in my early 20s, I would have thought that's a bunch of hocus pocus. Um, it was a little too airy, a little too flighty for me. I'm probably, if I heard somebody talking about deep compassion at that time, I wouldn't have got it, not to the degree that I did when that happened, because I had a series of about 10 openings where I didn't know it at the time, but I was in the process of healing my emotional body. I was healing the past. I was healing my pain, and I opened up my heart and uh, so profoundly that I healed this spinal disease. My mid back my spine was like that. It was a very bad bow in my back. Uh, 3 days a week of chiropractic for 10 years, and I couldn't heal it. I was also going to acupuncture and massage and doing different modalities and so on. But it was the combination of all of these different things that I've been sharing with you that led to my healing experience and also my greater experience of expanded levels of awareness. So, chapter 10, we start to get into that particular subject. And I'm happy to reference Power of Now and happy to reference New Earth and happy to reference some of the things that I did in terms of these teachings so that we can get down to business and maybe do some practices and do some work around it to change our lives because it radically changed my life. And I'm just looking for what's next, you know. I mean, like, not desperate for it, but I'm very curious and very interested in what comes next. And I really believe in Jesus's teaching. The Buddha had this teaching as well, spoken slightly differently, but Jesus used to say, "As you give, so shall you receive." So it's my job to give these teachings to you guys and help you bring them about in your life so that you can bring the kinds of transformations that you're looking for so that you can pay that forward. And then in the Buddhist terms, that provides good karma for me, so to speak, and good karma for you. And it has a rippling effect that comes back to help all of us. So the the core of the work is now being talked about in this chapter 10. So let's see what chapter 11 brings. Just got a couple chapters left, chapter 11, chapter 12. Let's see what they're about, and let's see if we can get to some practices that might make a difference. All right. And if you want a physical practice to check out our 21-day Qigong challenge. 10 minutes a day of practicing Qigong. It's an excellent lead in to doing some physical practices in conjunction with picking up the book if you desire to bring the psychology aspect into it, which I think is very, very important. I'll see you soon. Thank you.